Good morning. This is Giora Sharf from MPN Advocate Network, and I have the pleasure to have with us at ASH 2019 in Orlando, Florida, Professor Ruben Mesa, the head of the Cancer Center in San Antonio and one of the world's leading MPN experts. Welcome, Ruben. Would you be kind to summarize for the MPN patients the main news at ASH 2019, please?
Sure, well, so I'm delighted to be here and hope that this video can be helpful. A lot of exciting things here at the ASH meeting in 2019. A lot of things for MPN patients to really be interested in and things to be hopeful for. So first, as it relates to therapy, for patients with essential thrombocythemia and polycythemia vera, we continue to learn more about the impact of interferons, particularly the long-acting interferons. We heard this morning about the long-term outcomes with the ropegylated interferon, with now data 4 years out showing very favorable responses in terms of control of blood counts, in terms of a decrease in the likelihood of having a thrombotic or a bleeding event, all very favorable, as well as clearly being superior to hydroxyurea for better control of the molecular aspect or molecular burden of the disease. So all very helpful. In myelofibrosis, a tremendous amount of things happening. And for people to know, as we test drugs, if they're effective in myelofibrosis, they will then evolve to be tested eventually in ET and PV. So they really have relevance for all patients. But first, I would highlight the other JAK inhibitors. Ruxolitinib has now been approved for many years. We now have fedratinib that's approved in the US and may be approved in other countries soon. At this year's meeting, we had updates regarding the impact of fedratinib in the frontline setting and the ability to dose it at full dose with efficacy and safety for patients with thrombocytopenia down to a platelet count of 50,000. Second, we heard updates regarding momelotinib, JAK1 and JAK2 inhibitor, helping to improve anemia, and some updates that I helped to present showed really a pretty significant impact on anemia from the prior study, and the new global phase 3 study, Momentum, just opened up. So that may be available for you nearby. There's areas in Europe, Australia, the US, etc. Third, pacritinib is an active JAK2 inhibitor, safe for patients with marked thrombocytopenia. A new study just opened up called the Pacifica study, trying to quantify that and help to get that drug approved as well. There's a variety of new drugs that really are being tested that are showing some pretty exciting activity. First, luspatercept, approved now in hemoglobinopathies and MDS for anemia. We heard about the benefit of its use alone or in combination with ruxolitinib for anemia. There's drugs with new mechanisms of action, something called a BET inhibitor that inhibits another pathway relevant for myelofibrosis and for MPN patients, with a drug from Constellation Pharmaceuticals. That drug, both alone or in combination with ruxolitinib, showing ability to improve spleen symptoms, even anemia, and some degree of fibrosis. Finally, other drugs with different mechanisms of action, working against either CD123, a drug from Stemline, or a drug from Imago Pharmaceuticals, an LSD1 inhibitor showing beneficial activity. So what I leave folks with is really a profound sense of hope. There's a tremendous amount of activity, JAK inhibitors, new drugs looking at other pathways, using them alone or in combination. A lot of activity, a lot of people working on your behalf, trying to come up with better therapies for MPNs.
Thank you so much. It sounds so optimistic for MPN patients. All these new drugs, new molecules coming out, it really gives a lot of hope. I also heard at the conference here some news about combination of Jakavi and venetoclax. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, so I'm one of the co-investigators on that combination as well. And that combination, again, showing both safety and benefit. Patients were on ruxolitinib. They had, let's say, suboptimally controlled disease. They had an enlarged spleen. They still had symptoms. And then we added venetoclax and are seeing some good activity. So that is a model. As people are out there on Jakafi or ruxolitinib with a suboptimal response, there's a range of potential clinical trials available for them.
That's great. And my last question is, we know that in a couple of these drugs that you mentioned in the clinical trial, they had some issues where they had to stop the trial. Have you been able to overcome the challenges in the clinical trial to continue the development?
I'd say pretty much yes, really across the board. You know, as drugs are being developed, there's always an abundance of caution as we are learning about the drug and the side effects as things evolve. So it is really not uncommon for there to sometimes be a pause in terms of a trial or an enrollment in a trial while the data comes in regarding is it safe, is it effective, should it move forward. So fedratinib was a drug that had been put on a hold, taken off hold, and is now approved. Pacritinib had been on a hold and that's been lifted and it's in trials. So this is not uncommon. It can be quite distressing, undoubtedly, if you're a patient. Without question, it creates a sense of mystery, but it's really just an abundance, a sense of caution. Many of the drugs that we use each and every day have had some pause along their way while the regulatory bodies and physicians and scientists try to evaluate, is the drug safe, is it effective, is it the right dose? Sometimes we learn from these pauses that we need to dose the drug in a slightly different way.
I thank you so much, Professor Ruben Mesa. It's always a pleasure having you with us. I enjoy the conference and continue to bring the good news to the patients.
Great, thank you for including us.